Hello, good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar. I'm Mike McCarty. I'm the CEO of Safe Hiring Solutions and SafeVisitor Solutions. Just wanted to mention a couple things from a housekeeping perspective. We have everybody muted. This just cuts down on a lot of the background noise. So if you have questions as we go through the demonstration, there is an area over here in the Go to Webinars dialog box where you can post a question, and then when we wrap up, I'll read through those questions and answer any questions you have. So really focusing on showing you what the SafeVisitor system does. I want to mention before we get started, the focus of this is really from a threat and security perspective. We're going to see some features that we built into SafeVisitor that helps with the day-to-day management of volunteers, employees, vendors, contractors. But at the end of the day, this is a security system. We have an advisory board that's rich with experience in threat assessment arena. So, one of our board members, Paul Dvorak. Paul is the special agent in charge of the Secret Service office in Indianapolis. He's been on presidential details. Matter of fact, he's got over 20 years working with threat assessment and protecting high-level dignitaries. We've got Tony Vespa, who does a lot of our cyber intelligence and security-related work. Tony's a former Navy SEAL. We've got Dottie Davis, known internationally expert on violence prevention. She's a former assistant police chief in Fort Wayne. She is now, over the last, I think, 3 years, been the director of security for the Fort Wayne Community School Systems. Doug Shelton, who used to be a commander over the records division of the Indiana State Police. So we've got a real strong group of threat assessment professionals, including my background. I was a detective in Nashville, Tennessee for about 8 years. So this was built by people who understand what it takes to keep organizations and individuals safe. So SafeVisitor, it's a cloud-based system. What you're looking at right here is exactly what it would look like on a dashboard. That's why the deployment of this is pretty simplistic. Not a lot of work that goes into the IT side of deploying this. There's a webcam that's you may already have those on computers. A Dymo printer. A lot of schools have Dymo printers. Couple settings that we configure or give you to configure in the Dymo printer, and then you get a plug and play 2D barcode scanner, and that's really all it takes. Is about 5 minutes per workstation to deploy this. The great thing about being a cloud-based system versus a lot of the visitor management systems that may run locally. Being in a cloud means if I'm an administrator, I could be sitting anywhere in the world that I have internet access, and if I needed to know something, or if somebody needed me to log in and take a look at something, or I needed to pull a report out of the visitor management system, I can do it anywhere. On an evacuation, I could be standing in a parking lot on a tablet or a phone and log in and be able to pull lists of visitors to make sure they're all accounted for. So it's a total cloud-based system. Couple of the other real unique features that we'll get into in a bit, but how this differentiates from other visitor management systems, especially those in the school space, is that most visitor management systems talk about doing a background check, but when they talk about doing a background check, they're generally talking about doing a sex offender check when somebody enters your building. That's a very low-level check. I mean, you've got lots of sex offenders that don't necessarily have to register as a sex offender, or you have sex offenders that predate the registries. When we talk about background checks, we can do that for your temporary visitors, which is your probably lowest volume of visitors, but then we are integrated with our background screening software, so you can determine what level of screening on any type of visitor, and you can define classifications of visitors. So if you have different levels of volunteers, you can define what those volunteers, what you call them. and what level of background check is required, what's the frequency for a recheck. Um, the um, the integration is the only integration within a visitor management system in the United States that can accommodate these kind of comprehensive criminal background checks based on that particular classification of visitor. The other piece that's kind of unique is that we created geofencing. And so there's a mobile app. And so if you're running the geofencing, we got a school that just deployed this in the state of Washington. And as they deploy the geofence, all of their volunteers are able to, once they've been approved, download the mobile app. It stores their electronic ID. But now, as they approach one of the 20 buildings on that campus, as soon as they cross that geofence, it's going to automatically send their information to the screen. Much like what you're seeing here with David Brewer, it would actually be in this visitors nearby. So once they cross the geofence, all their information populates here. They come up, hit a buzzer. First thing you can do is you can make eye-to-eye contact. You can look at your screen. You can say, yes, that's the same person that's standing out there, and you allow them into the building. Again, that's a threat assessment perspective. What we're trying to do, and we'll be continuing to add new functionality ongoing, to where you're interacting with people that are not employees of your organization outside of the building, in between the doors, before they're actually standing there inside the school. And so this is one piece of that helps control who is entering and exiting your facilities. So when I talk about temporary visitors, what we are talking about here, and generally for most schools, this should be kind of your lowest volume of visitor. These are people that show up very infrequently, maybe once or twice a year. They're not having direct or ongoing contact with a student. They might be coming in for meetings. That's the visitor that's probably coming in today, signing a little guest book, maybe going into an admin building for a meeting. And so it's because of the low risk nature of this visitor, then we do an instant check on them. So it runs it through the National Sex Offender. It also runs it through your excluded parties list. How that works is we scan the 2D barcode on the back of your government issued license. So if you pull out your government issued license, you'll see a big 2D barcode on the back, depending on what state you're in. We support all 50 states. We support North America. Just added the Mexican matricula card. Trying to get a hold of a copy of one right now to do some testing to make sure it's working correctly. And so two things with that technology. One, a lot of competitors use flatbed scanners that take a photo of the front of your government issued ID. Well, it could be a false ID and it's still going to import that data. And we also have a current client that was using another system, and it allowed a sex offender to enter their school because it imported the characters incorrectly. So by using the 2D barcode scanner, it does two things. First of all, it ensures the data is entered correctly because it pulls it off the license as it's issued. And secondly, it really authenticates that ID is valid, because even a false ID might have an image that looks like a barcode, but highly unlikely it would be coded correctly because that information is not publicly available information. So as we walk through this, and we'll do this real quick, the attendant, if somebody presents a government issued ID, they show them the ID. They run it through the barcode scanner. It's going to pop up. If they've ever visited before, we'll already have a photo. So I can click continue. It just ran a background check on me. So what it did is it ran through the National Sex Offender and the excluded parties. Comes up no background check matches. And so if there was any negative information, so a possible hit on the sex offender data, it would show it right here. We would also link to more information if you needed that. The other thing is it would show any excluded parties. So I'll show you in just a minute. You have the ability to create list of individuals that are excluded from coming onto your property, and it would show right here. So let's say if we had a hit and we were going to deny entry, once I click this deny entry, it not only denies them and creates a specific denied entry as a log, we've also, during initial setup, configured your denied entry to send messages to whomever you designate. So you have two types of communication in the system: denied and the emergency button on the top left. Both of them have a global communications group, which means I might be like Dottie on our advisory board up at Fort Wayne. She has 53 buildings. Dottie may be in a completely different area of Fort Wayne and somebody gets denied entry. She wants to know about that, but she's not necessarily going to respond to it. So she would get an email and a text that has all the information that you just saw on the dashboard. It would have name, building, reason for the denial, and that shows up as a text and an email. We also have building level contacts. So let's say this was at the high school. You might have the principal, assistant principal, whomever you have designated. They get this because they're going to respond to the front lobby and maybe communicate with this visitor why they're not allowed to enter the facility. And so it gives them the information as they're working their way up to the lobby in a photo, so they actually know who they're looking for as they enter. The emergency button is exactly what it stands for. Same type of communication piece, has the global setting and a local building setting. We've seen this used several times, and most recently, one of the schools had a disgruntled person show up and was causing a problem. Instead of having to divert their attention and not being able to closely monitor them and pick up a phone and try to track somebody down, all they had to do was come up here, hit this button, and it sends that emergency notification. School resource officers, principal, assistant principal, whomever is designated, they get an emergency alert, and it tells them, and it sends the same information. If they've started into the process and we've captured their photograph and information, it will send that as well, but it sends them to the exact building and location in that building where they need to respond to. So in this case, no negative information in the background check. They just type in, who they are here to visit, and the reason for the visit, and then it allows them to print a badge. And I'll go back so I can show you what the badge looks like. Once you print the badge, then they show up on the dashboard. So if I'm an administrator, we're logged in as an administrator on our demo site. I'm seeing everybody that's logged in across our campus. And so that's why it tells me which building. If I am a attendant or user in a specific building, I only see the information in my building. So as an administrator, I can come in here, I can filter through different buildings and see who's logged in. Maybe I'm looking for somebody specifically. I can search through this log. So as long as they're actively in the building, we show them on the dashboard. Now, I want to back up a second and show you, we'll go back to the screen. We'll create a new visitor so I can inactivate the webcam. While we're on this screen, when it prints the temporary ID badge, it's going to print an ID badge that looks very much like this. And so this is a self-stick ID badge. You'll notice it's going to have, it's going to say, I'm an employee, I'm a visitor. If you have registration types like student teacher, substitute teacher, whatever you classify is going to be up here. It's going to have their name, it's going to have the building, it's going to have the date and time stamp. It's going to have a barcode here that they can use to scan out when they exit. They're just going to place a white sticker over this stop sign. The reason for that is it begins a process of expiring the badge in about 6 hours. And so in 6 hours when the badge expires, it's going to look like this. You'll see the stop sign bleeds back through. So if I try to come back tomorrow and re-enter your building, I'm not going to be able to do it with this particular badge. It's going to show that it's expired. So that's the temporary ID, so it gets your staff accustomed to anybody in the building should have some form of ID on, or you may want to stop and question them. We also have created the ability to pre-register for events. And so if I've got a group coming in, say for a grandparents' day or a meeting, I can actually send them this link that is specific to your organization, and it could be in a calendar invite. It could go out as a global email. Anybody coming from Grandparents' Day needs to register. They click on this link. It walks them through a process. They enter their information. They send that information in. Actually, let me do this so I can get to the next screen. And the building, let's just pick one. If it's for, say, a specific meeting, somebody's coming in to meet with me, they fill out the rest of the information. They put the date they're coming in. If they know, say, my email and mobile phone number, if they put that information in here, then what happens, it'll show up on this tab under visitors arriving soon. And so this stores the information, so it allows anybody working at the front desk, what they should do is come in each morning, take a look to see who's coming in today. First thing they're going to look for is to make sure they see a green circle with a check mark next to their name. That indicates that they've passed the background check. If they see red with an X or an exclamation point, that means they failed the background check. They can click on that, determine what it was, if it's them, and now you're having a conversation with that visitor before they ever arrive on your property. So it lets me see who's coming in today. Now, when Mike shows up, what I do is have him present his ID, confirm it's him. Once I click this up arrow, it's going to print that self-expiring badge. It's also, because I've entered an email and a phone number, it's going to send a text and an email, in this case to Sam administrator, because that's who I'm meeting with. It's going to let Sam know, hey, Mike McCarty has arrived, so your visitor is waiting, for you. So now I don't even, as a front office secretary, I don't have to pick up the phone and notify Sam that his visitor's here. The system will do that for you. It also allows you to upload a list. So if you had a list of visitors that were coming in and you had their name, date of birth, and their date that they were coming in for a meeting, you can upload that right here. And by clicking on it, you can actually download a sample file that we have everything laid out that you need. So they fill it out, and then you just simply upload it, and all of those visitors will be pre-populated here. We show on the dashboard anybody that's coming in. You can either look at today or you can look out for 7 days. So that just speeds the process of helping folks get into the buildings even more quickly. The third tab is visitors nearby, and this is when you're using the geofence. And so this is when they cross that geofence, their information is going to show here. One of the other uses, I know Hamilton Southeastern Schools here in Indiana, they have their school resource officers set up with the mobile app, approved in the system as a registration type school resource officer. So now as those officers maybe come in side doors, back doors, they're not necessarily always coming through the front door, they will automatically show up here, and as they exit, maybe they go out a back door, get in their car and leave, then they're going to disappear off the visitors nearby list. So it's another tool for front office personnel to be able to look to see if the school resource officer's in the building, if they've left, and be able to manage that as well. The other type of visitor that we manage in the system are what we would consider your more frequent visitors, these being volunteers, contractors, student teachers, anybody that you would need to credential or screen at a higher level. And so we set up those registration types, we configure it to a background check in Safe Hiring, and then they go through the process electronically of pre-registering and initiating and completing a background check. So again, you would have a link. They would click on this link. They would select, I am a new certified employee. I'm an existing employee. We can manage all of your employees as well. So in some states like Indiana, where schools now have to do background checks on all of their existing employees, 20% a year over the next 5 years to get them on a matrix, we can actually upload all of your existing employees into the system, expire the first 20% this year, expire the next 20% next year, so on and so forth. So the system then automatically kicks out an invitation to complete the background check. So in this case, we're going to select volunteer. I click next step. This agreement right here is specific to that registration type. So for a volunteer or a temporary visitor, I may want them to sign something that says X, Y, and Z. But for a student teacher, for a substitute teacher, for a contractor vendor, that information might be different. And so you can configure this based on the registration type. So in this example, it's actually one I pulled off of one of our existing schools because they integrated their anti-bullying video for their volunteers. So as they're going through the agreement that they're going to electronically sign, when they get to here, they've got to click open and preview the anti-bullying video. And then once that's completed, they come back, check a box that indicates they have viewed the video, and then they move on through the process, enter their information for the background check. Once they submit the background check, it actually pushes that information over to Safe Hiring Solutions, initiates a background check. It takes about 2 to 3 to 4 days to complete a background check. Once that background check is completed, it sends it back through an API to SafeVisitor. If there is no criminal history, SafeVisitor can automatically approve your visitor. If that's a volunteer, an employee, whomever, it can automatically approve them, send them an email they've been approved, send them a link to download the mobile app, send them their electronic badge. So now the only registrations that your team has to manage are what we would call the exceptions, and that's people who have a criminal history. So we've got a lot of crazy data in here because we're on a demo site. But under your registrations, under the pending, you're really only going to see 2 types of pending registrations. You're going to see those with it looks like a clock, which means that the background check is still pending. Or you're going to see a symbol, which is a red triangle with an exclamation point, and that means they have a criminal record. So the report has come back, there's a criminal record, and it's held right here. If there's one with a criminal history, underneath the Actions button, you can go to Information. Under Information, what it shows you here is basically an electronic signature of everything that was submitted by that particular visitor. Shows the IP address, date and time stamp, the external URL. So in this example, they clicked the anti-bullying video, and all of that is stored here. All the indications, the electronic signatures, we ask several questions related to criminal history. Those are stored here. And then if this had been an actual background check, there would be one other line right here, and it would say background screening report, and you could open that up right here. You could review it. You don't have to go to Safe Hiring and log in. Once you review it, then you can look at it and go, hey, that was a DUI 20 years ago. They're a volunteer, doesn't impact. They can still be approved. I can hit the approve button. Or maybe you look at the background check and you say, wow, that's a convicted child molester, not allowed to volunteer in our school. So I can come in here and deny them. Or administrators, you can deny and exclude them. What that means is first they're denied as a volunteer, and then it also adds them to an exclusion list. So if they try to enter a building, it's going to flag them. Then you also have visitor logs. So one of the key things during the training and implementation, obviously the front end is scanning individuals as they come into your organization, but the key sauce here is also making sure that when visitors leave the building, that they're being scanned out or as they exit the facility, so we have an accurate timestamp. So on this third one here on me, I came in at 9:23, I left at 3:59 a.m. We will purge all of your visitors and and remove them every night at midnight. But if we do that on a routine basis, it's going to skew your visitor logs. And so now, as an administrator, I can come in here. I can actually look across all my buildings. I can scan and look for visitors in just specific buildings. I can do it based on any one of our attendants. Yesterday, we were meeting with the advisory board, and one of our very large school districts, the director of security, she said she provides a list of how many visitors each quarter to the cabinet. They also run individual based on all of their attendance. It's part of the performance evaluation to make sure they're using the system and that people are being screened as they come in and out of the facilities. So they use these logs for a lot of different reasons. They also had a visitor that lodged a complaint with the superintendent a couple years ago, said they'd never been in one of their buildings. The director of security came in here, ran their name, pulled it up, gave it to the superintendent. The superintendent spoke with the visitor, said, you were in our building on this date from this time to this time, and it ended whatever the complaint that was being made. And so you have access to all this data. You can even export this information if you want to pull this out and provide it as part of a cabinet meeting, or what other form or fashion you want to slice and dice the information. You have all access to the visitor logs here as an administrator. The exclusion list, like I mentioned earlier, you create this. These are individuals that are not allowed on your property. We need at least a first and last name, birth date even better. You can make this global, meaning none of your schools or none of your properties, or you can change this to just a specific building, and then select the building, a reason for the restriction, and then you can put details or information in here that'll show on the dashboard if this person tries to enter the building. If you have a photo, you can actually upload a photo now, and this will also show on the dashboard if somebody tries to enter, so they can again verify them and who they are. You manage this on the client side. We can upload a list if you have one, say in a spreadsheet today. But that we also keep a denied entry log. I think I mentioned this. It's completely separate. So say that your administrative team wants to know every quarter how many people have been denied entry and what's the reason for that. You can run a log here. We also keep a log of visitors nearby. This is people that are running the mobile app and cross the geofence, but don't necessarily enter the building. And so we keep a separate log of that as well. So that is SafeVisitor. So it's probably the most robust visitor management system out there with the integrated background checks. Futuristically, we're going to be adding some really interesting products. One of them is going to be an arrest monitor, where we can actually have access to about 80% of the jails in the United States, and we would be able to monitor if any of your employees, volunteers, vendors, contractors, anybody that you would enter, we will be able to monitor if they were arrested in real time. We've got an integration with Skyward Student Information System that's going to be coming out probably late winter. We got a kiosk model that we're working on right now to be able to deploy this in between the doors. And so we've got a pretty robust development schedule of things that will be added over the next 6, 8, 12 months to the system. I'm going to pause for a second and see if we have any questions. I'm not seeing any questions. Again, thanks for taking some time out of your day. We appreciate you participating on the webinars. If you do think of anything after we get off, feel free to give us a call. Send us an email, sales@safehiringsolutions.com, or you can call us toll free 888-215-8296. Otherwise, have a great day.